Guys, today we're talking about playing live music with an amp pedal. And for this demonstration, I'm going to show you how to connect this, which is very, very simple. And we're going to get that out of the way first. But for this case, I'm using the Blackstar Amp 3. Also, this video is sponsored by Blackstar, so I want to give you guys a huge thank you, Ali and everyone I've worked with Blackstar. Thank you guys so much for this opportunity. This has been a real pleasure. I have had this, by the way, in my studio, like exclusively playing through this thing right here for the past couple of months. But I wanted to bring this to one of my live solo gigs so I could show you in a live scenario how to connect it. So we're going to go through that real quick now. After that, I'm going to share some more tones. I'll also give you some advantages of using an amp pedal like the Blackstar Amp 3 for live gigs, as opposed to using a real amplifier or even a processor or amp simulator. Lastly, I'm going to share why I didn't use the Blackstar Amp 3 in the actual gig that I played. I actually filmed this part that you're going to hear later and what you heard in the intro. I filmed that before starting the show. I'm going to explain why and what I plan to get for these live shows instead. So first, we'll start out by connecting the Amp 3 to your soundboard. Now, with the Blackstar Amp 3, there are a couple different ways you can do this. Now, in this case, I've got an instrument cable plugged into the back of it here. This is their line out. It says line out phones. So I've got that connected to the Amp 3 here. Very simple. And all you do from there is plug the other end into your soundboard. In this case, I'm playing through a Mackie Pro FX 10 V3 soundboard, and I've got this connected to channel 3. The channel doesn't matter. I've just got some vocal mics in channels 1 and 2 there. Now, one little tip I'll give you is I like to start that channel out flat, and usually I don't touch the EQ at all. I'd rather just use the EQ on the amplifier, or in this case, the amp pedal itself. And if I need to make any tweaks beyond that, of course, you can adjust the board there, but I just leave my EQ on the soundboard flat. You don't have to, it's just what I prefer to do. Now, another way you can plug this in, and this might be preferred for most people, the Blackstar Amp 3 also has the balanced output. So you can connect an XLR cable to that, and of course run that cable to your soundboard. Now, some may say this will give you a little bit cleaner sound. I don't know how much it matters in this case, but of course using that balanced output going to the input like that can help prevent interruptions. The only thing left to do is now just plug your guitar into the Amp 3 or whatever amp pedal that you're using. Pretty simple. Another instrument cable, or in my case, I like to use wireless. I just prefer that. It just makes it easier to kind of, I don't know, you just feel free. You guys who use wireless systems know exactly what I mean. Even if you're in close proximity to your mic and you're not moving a whole lot, it just feels more free. And in my case, I often switch guitars. You guys know I use a looper at my solo gigs. Sometimes I'll loop an acoustic rhythm, then I'll pull the wireless out of that guitar, plug it into my electric so that I can solo over that rhythm. So in this case, I'm using the Boss WL20L wireless unit. Now, one more thing to consider when using amp pedals is the volume, of course, of the pedal itself, the master volume, the channel volume. You know, the Amp 3, you have 3 different channels on here, but you've got a master volume. So of course you want to adjust that accordingly, along with adjusting your channel volume on the soundboard to mix that in with the vocals. And if you're playing with a live band, all the other instruments, I know, kind of common sense, but one thing I want to point out, especially on the Blackstar Amp 3, you've got this knob back here for your overall level. And this is good to notice because if, for example, you have your master volume on the Amp 3 or whatever amp pedal you're playing through, if you got your volume all the way up or kind of cranked and your channel volume sort of up there as well, and you're like, well, where's my output at? Well, that little knob might be turned down for whatever reason, or vice versa. So just check out where that knob is. I keep mine at about mid-level. Well, actually it's a little bit beyond that here. So just play around with that to get that sweet spot so that all your volumes are kind of where you want them to be. So I think the biggest advantage of the Blackstar Amp 3 as opposed to using a real amplifier, obviously you've got to lug that big amp on stage, then you've got to mic it up, then you have the space issue that a lot of us may face playing live music. Sometimes the stage isn't that big, or maybe you're tucked into a corner somewhere, like when you're playing live solo gigs like myself. And also if you're playing with a full band and and you're in close proximity where your amplifier could blow everybody else off the stage and no one can hear anything except for your amp. How many of you have been in that situation where your guitar player's amp is just too loud and they get upset when you ask them to turn it down, don't they? Now, on that note, the Blackstar Amp 3 is actually a real amplifier, meaning you can connect this directly to a cabinet. So you can play the Amp 3 like that with a real cab, mic it up, and I have a video on how to do that and record with the Amp 3. I've got it up there if you guys want to check that out. But the obvious advantage of using an amp pedal like the Amp 3 is, one, that direct connection to the soundboard. There's no microphone that you have to move around in place. This thing has its own IRs, its own impulse responses, which in my opinion, they sound great. So you're using the amplifier with the Blackstar impulse responses, and you're just getting that clear direct signal. Plus, you're saving yourself from all the issues we talked about when playing with a live amplifier. You're saving a lot of space. You're not blasting everybody else off the stage. So it's a practical way to get a really nice sound when you're playing live. Now you may ask, well, why not just use a processor? Something like the AXFX, the Helix from line 6, the Quad Cortex, the Kemper, the list goes on. Why not just use one of those where you've got access to hundreds of amps and effects? Well, believe it or not, no matter how great the technology's gotten, there are still some guitar players out there that just don't care for those units for whatever reason. And I think it might come down to how these things feel when you're playing them. Yes, I know professional bands that have been around a while have switched over to these types of units. Nothing wrong with that. Those are great units. But there are some guitar players out there that feel like these amp pedals give them a more realistic feel to their guitar when they're playing. And if you're like me, I prefer simplicity. I don't want 100 different amps or 400 different amplifiers and effects and all that. I just need a minimal amount of sounds that I really like. And the Amp 3 does all of that for me. It gives me exactly what I need. There are 3 channels here. You've got a clean, you've got a crunch, you've got an overdrive. You even have some other options within the Amp 3, within those channels there, to even broaden things, like you've got the response, the EL34, the 6L6, EL84, and some other tone shaping features, along with their own Blackstar impulse responses, which again, I think sound really good. And I think the Amp 3 is also perfect for playing with a live band as well. There's only one reason why I didn't use this for the actual solo gig, and I'll explain that in a second, but I promised you a few tones first, so let's hear those. Why didn't I use the Blackstar Amp 3 for this live gig? So again, I recorded this segment you just heard and the one in the intro. I recorded that before I started the show. I set everything up. I plugged the Blackstar Amp 3 in real quick and just filmed myself. I'm like, let me at least get some tones out there. By the way, I recorded this. I always bring my laptop to my gigs in case I want to record. I recorded this using PreSonus Studio One Pro. So that's the direct signal that you heard. So number one, my live solo gigs are primarily acoustic, and what I'll do is I'll use a looper, I'll play an acoustic rhythm, then I'll switch guitars, pick up the electric, and I'll play some guitar solos over that rhythm. And that's something I've become known for around town. I play in the Tampa area. I play probably anywhere from 10 to 12 local shows a month, and I've kind of become known for that. So Kind of cool. Most of you know I've been using the Pod Go, the Line 6 Pod Go, for that purpose. Now what I like about that is I've got my acoustic patches in the Pod Go. I also have a couple tones for the electric. For the live solo gig purpose it works. However, some of you know this as well, I've been wanting to get something different for the acoustic that's specifically made for the acoustic, and I'd also like to get a little bit better sound for my electric, which again, these gigs are mainly acoustic. I just pick up the electric probably once every set, sometimes not even that often, and I'll rip a solo over an acoustic rhythm. But I would like to have a better tone, and you might say, well, then why don't you use the Amp 3? That sounds pretty good. It sounds great. The one thing though is missing delay for me. I use delay on my leads. Now I could connect a delay pedal to the Amp 3, and the cool thing is there's a power source. There are actually two power inputs on the Amp 3. Let me show you those real quick. Right here, you've got two power sources. So I could plug pedals into this thing and I'm set. However, I like to keep things as simple as possible, so I don't really want to bring another pedal to the show. I know it's only one more element, but it's one more element on top of the many elements that I already have when I'm setting up and tearing down. I also like some reverb on my leads too, and the Blackstar actually has reverb. Let me show you that. By the way, I've got an entire video on this unit here on the Blackstar Amp 3. I'll throw that up there if you guys want to check that out. But you also have reverb on this unit as well. So reverb is covered. I just need some delay. And again, you know, connecting a pedal, bringing one extra pedal, not really a big deal, but it's just one more thing I got to bring on top of everything else. Possible solutions. So you guys may know this already. Blackstar has an Amp 2. And that unit has reverb, chorus, and delay. So I'm looking into the Blackstar Amp 2 specifically for the live solo gigs. And of course, I'll continue to use my Blackstar Amp 3 here in the studio. I just finished up recording all of the lead guitar tracks for my new album with the Blackstar Amp 3, and I'm very pleased with how that's come out. You guys will be hearing that soon. So guys, if you have any questions, please drop those in the comments below. And if these videos help you, please let me know that as well. I know I do a lot of like lesson-based stuff on the channel here, but every now and then I'll come up with something like this that I think is informative, and there may be only a few people out there that it helps, but it really helps them, and to me the video is so worth it to make for that purpose as well. So guys, I hope you enjoyed this video. If it helped, please give this a thumbs up. Make sure you subscribe to the channel, and guys, as always, keep it metal and keep playing music.